have sold the Raptor. But obviously, if you've been following the channel, you know that it's been replaced by this beautiful Badlands Bronco, and I'm super happy with it. But since I sold the Raptor for this, I figured that I'd give an exit interview on buying a high mileage Raptor, what I learned, what issues I had with it, and my overall viewpoint of the truck as a whole. So let's go ahead and start right off the bat with issues and things that I wish I would have known about or looked out for when starting my search for a high mileage Raptor. Obviously, I got a high mileage Raptor because I didn't want to pay the outrageous prices for a low mileage Raptor. These things with under 100,000 miles have the potential of going for 40 to 50,000. I was looking around the 30,000 mark, and that would give me a truck with around 150,000 miles. So here we go. Issue number one that I wish I knew about: the power steering. So within the first week of owning the truck, I went out with some buddies off-roading, and I'd always wanted a Raptor as a kid because I saw the marketing material for them, and I'm like, wow, this is a truck that you can just absolutely beat on. It's basically a Baja truck for the street, which is more or less true, depending on your definition of a Baja truck. I went out, we were just in a gravel play pit, small hill climb, and I was ripping donuts, drifting around, which is fine, but when you're doing that with a hydraulic power steering system, you really should not be touching full lock when you are doing donuts high RPM. This is true for many vehicles, but with the Raptor especially, it uses the same power steering pump as, you know, a little F-150 like my mom's truck that has maybe 30-inch tires on it, not big heavy 35-inch tires on 17-inch wheels like the Raptor. The stock reservoir does not prevent cavitation. You get air bubbles in there, and that'll be a quick death to your power steering pump in conjunction with the high RPMs and full lock. Once you hit full lock, you go into a higher pressure state with the power steering pump, and that causes the pump to blow and no longer work. Well, this is what happened to me. It was either a combination of getting air in the system or just ripping donuts. I don't think I hit full lock, but regardless, right after that trip on the way home, I noticed that it was very hard to turn the wheel at stops unless I gave it gas, and when I did give it gas, there was a distinct whine coming from the power steering pump area. So I had to upgrade it right away. I got a Howe power steering reservoir with a filter, so that way if I did blow the pump, none of those particles would get throughout the rack, possibly destroy that. It was baffled to help with cavitation, and I got a power steering cooler hooked up to an aux switch with a fan, so that way I could leave that on and help keep the power steering fluid temps low. Now this system was pretty great since I didn't want to spend the $1,500 or whatever it was for the complete upgraded power steering pump from Howe, I believe, as well, and it did great for about a year, the whole year that I owned the truck, except until the very end of my ownership. Was down in Redmond with the boys, was getting a little sendy on a bowl, and yeah, blew it again there. I had done this job before, so I was able to swap the pump out in a couple hours, but nonetheless, it's still annoying, and you just have to be mindful that this power steering pump can't really take that abuse, you know, going full lock, obviously, but sometimes even with the stock reservoir, just hitting jumps, whoops, off-camber stuff, if you get air in that system, then it's gonna be a quick death to that power steering. So issue number one, that was probably the biggest issue I had with the Raptor during my ownership, and that applies to pretty much any Gen 1 Raptor, doesn't matter mileage. Now moving on to the second issue. Again, this is pretty common with the Raptor, just an extra maintenance item with a specialty vehicle, if you want to call it that. But the Raptor comes with Fox shocks. Obviously 2.5-inch bodied, so that way, you know, it soaks up things like whoops, jumps better, doing Raptor things. Well, if you run these trucks exclusively on the street, you're supposed to rebuild them 40,000, 50,000 miles. If you're exclusively off-road, maybe 10,000 miles. So yet again, on my first off-road venture, I blew a shock. Either that or it was already leaking and the dealer just cleaned it up real nice, so I couldn't tell. But I wish I knew this from the get-go, because I would have pushed the dealer on this hard, letting them know, hey, if these shocks haven't been rebuilt, it's going to be at least $1,000 to get them rebuilt, and that's not coming out of my pocket. They're going to have to take the loss. Good point of negotiation and price. Probably could have knocked off at least $1,000, maybe even more, and put that, you know, towards a nice coilover set. But this was not necessarily something I was aware of until obviously I went out for my first off-road adventure, and blew a shock. So I'd say keep that in mind if you're looking at higher mileage trucks or even trucks with over 50,000 miles on them. The market on these trucks is so niche that most people looking for a Raptor will probably know about the shock rebuilds anyways, but if they have not been done, it is definitely a point of leverage to help negotiate that price. So I guess one of the last issues I had with the Raptor, and this is really kind of answering the question of can you get a clean high mileage Raptor? The answer is yes you can. The body on my truck was perfect, no dents. There were some scratches, but hey, that's expected on an 8-year-old truck and a truck with 160,000 miles. But the one thing that I wish I would have also pushed more on was getting maintenance records. So within the first couple months, I had to change a couple idler pulleys because I had a little bit of a whine when I'd rev it up stationary or even driving the truck. Idler pulleys had some play in them. No big deal, pretty simple. And then the other thing I had to do were the axle seals. Was able to do this job in my driveway. Was a slight pain, but then again, got it done. Some may say that that is just the cost of looking at higher mileage vehicles anyways, but these issues are especially important on the Raptor. Things like cooling system maintenance, CV axles, of course the shocks. Think about it, the Raptor has a lot more wheel travel than your average truck. So you're gonna wanna make sure those CVs are performing correctly because they're gonna be put under a little bit more stress. And checking for that maintenance will help you down the road if you do decide to sell it, but we're going to talk about that here in the next section, which is basically what did I learn from purchasing a high mileage Raptor and what I would do differently if I were to do this again down the road. So like I said, obviously these trucks have a very niche market to them, and if I were to do it again, I would only spend the money if I knew I was going to be keeping that truck for a while. I wouldn't buy it just because you think it's cheap for a cool truck, because sure, the market was crazy, but if you do have to sell the truck down the road, a lot of people are just going to see it as a 160,000, 170,000 mile truck, and they're going to lowball you $18,000, $20,000, even though the market should at least pull 25 to 30 for them. Because if you buy the truck for around 30 with that many miles on it, you're probably going to go under on it. So that brings up the next point of if you do have to sell this truck, the market is pretty niche on it. You'll either have those people who see it as a 160, 170,000 mile truck who want to lowball you, or you will get those people who actually know what the truck is, but they're going to be asking you all sorts of questions about the truck's maintenance history. Of course, it's high mileage, but the maintenance history is very important on these vehicles. Things like the trans service. Has it been serviced, rebuilt, fluid flushed? I mentioned the CVs, shock rebuilds, cooling system maintenance. Of course, these trucks are great for pre-running. They can be built into great pre-runner platforms, but usually that involves some desert-like conditions, and cooling system maintenance is very important because if you have an issue with the cooling system out there, then there's a strong possibility that you're going to toast some expensive parts in the motor. At the very least, you're going to get stranded out there and have to get a tow back to civilization out from where you're pre-running at, or running. But it sounds kind of weird just to say running instead of pre-running. So if you do go for a high mileage Gen 1, you're definitely going to want to check out all these things. You're going to want to check for cab corner rust, heck, even the underside of the body, skid plates if that's been beaten up on. All these little things because they are important, obviously, when you're buying an off-road truck that has the potential of being beaten on. Also, if I were to do it again, I would either buy a Roush truck that is already supercharged, and then know immediately thereafter that I'd have to drop the $1,500 for the Howe power steering system, or I'd buy a truck that is already built suspension-wise, and then focus on building the motor from there. So we've been talking about the negatives of my high mileage Raptor, but there were a lot of positives to the truck. So starting right off the bat, I mean, the truck itself, besides those couple of issues that are common to Gen 1 Raptors anyways, was pretty dang reliable. You have a solid motor in there, a 6.2 liter from the Super Duty, which, if taken care of correctly, which mainly consists of just regular oil changes, cooling system maintenance, they're 500,000 mile motors. Next thing being is that they're pretty dang capable right out of the box. Of course, they're not trophy truck level with 30 inches of suspension, but I went out to the dunes multiple times ripped up some bowls, hit some whoops that were probably bigger than any truck you can buy should be able to hit, and went over them faster than any truck that you should be able to buy. And this is just a Gen 1 Raptor. They make a great platform for pre-runners. Like I said, there's a large aftermarket for these trucks to transform it into exactly what you want. If you just want bolt-on coilovers, maybe a little bit extra travel, upper lower control arms, bolt-on coilovers, there you go. If you want to go all out, bed cage, RPG stage 4 suspension system, you can do that too. But then again, this truck was probably the most fun vehicle that I've ever had, just because of the fact that it pretty much took everything I threw at it. Even though I couldn't go full lock, there were still many times that I was just going full throttle through corners, not really worrying about temperatures on the truck, not worrying about if the motor was gonna blow up, because the platform, the drivetrain, is just that solid. And then building off of the aftermarket, the truck itself sounded great. All I did was a simple muffler and resonator delete, and the thing sounded vicious. That truck with that motor, even with that many miles, it was definitely ready to be able to take some performance mods like boost, force induction, supercharger, headers, tune, whatever. It was ready for that, and you can make a good bit of power. Just slap a supercharger on there, 600 horsepower, and it still maintains that reliability. And really, just one last thing about the truck, it was badass. I got compliments about it all the time because it has a presence going down the road. It's wider than a normal F-150. The front end was still aggressive for being almost, well, I guess that design of that truck was over a decade old. The paint was nice. With the special edition package, it had the nice graphics, some nice beadlock capable wheels. So it was a great looking and performing truck. And to be honest, I kind of miss it at times, which kind of leads me here. It is for sale again. Should I buy it back? I don't know. And that is going to wrap up my exit interview on my High Mileage Raptor. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a thumbs up, share it, and also if you want to keep up with the off-road content with the Bronco here, subscribe. If you want to check out the video about all the issues I had with my High Mileage Raptor, I'll go ahead and link that up in the top corner for you guys. But with all that being said, join the club, and I'll see you in the next one.